The reluctant signature, the champagne in Naomi Winter's glass remained untouched as she gazed at the Manhattan skyline from the penthouse balcony. 28 years of independence, education, and determination had led to this moment, signing away her future to a man she barely knew. "Are you reconsidering our arrangement?" Edison Park's voice was calm behind her, devoid of pressure or judgment. At 34, the tech mogul had built Horizon Technologies into a global empire, yet remained an enigma to most of the business world. Naomi turned, meeting his steady gaze. "No. My family's nursery business needs this investment, and your family needs the appearance of a stable marriage before your grandmother changes her will. The terms are clear." What she didn't say was how it pained her to abandon her botanical research fellowship. Years of studying rare plant species that could revolutionize medicine, all paused because her father's poor business decisions had left their 3-generation family nursery drowning in debt. Edison nodded once, his expression unreadable behind wire-rimmed glasses. "The prenuptial agreement gives you complete independence after 3 years. Your family's business will be stabilized, and my grandmother will have seen the marriage she requested before she—" He cleared his throat. "Before her illness progresses. And no expectations of—" Naomi hesitated. "A real marriage?" "No." Edison straightened his already immaculate tie. "We'll maintain appearances publicly. Private lives remain private." The contract sat on the glass table between them. 50 pages of legal language that reduced marriage to its coldest form. A business transaction. Naomi's hand trembled slightly as she signed. Thinking of her parents' loving 30-year union, they would be heartbroken to know their daughter had chosen this path, which is why she would never tell them the truth. Edison's signature was swift and decisive. He closed the folder and handed it to his waiting attorney, who nodded and discreetly exited. "The ceremony will be small but elegant. 2 weeks from today," Edison stated. "My assistant will coordinate everything." Naomi nodded, suddenly exhausted. "And my research?" Edison's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "There's a laboratory in the east wing of my home. It's yours to use as you wish. I understand your work is important." The unexpected consideration caught her off guard. "Thank you," she replied, unsure what else to say. Later that evening, as her taxi approached her modest apartment for one of the last times, Naomi's phone chimed with a message from an unknown number. "I understand this isn't ideal for either of us, but I made one promise to myself when I proposed this arrangement. Your dreams won't become casualties of this contract." Naomi stared at the message, reading it 3 times. In their previous meetings, Edison had been cordial but businesslike. This glimpse of thoughtfulness was unexpected. As she packed her research notes that night, Naomi wondered what other surprises awaited in this marriage of convenience. The botanical specimens on her windowsill, rare orchids she had nurtured from seedlings, seemed to watch her with silent judgment. Unlike these plants, which followed the natural order of growth and bloom, her life was now following an artificial path. But perhaps, she thought, as she carefully wrapped her precious specimen jars, even the most calculated arrangements could yield unexpected growth. The silent estate, the cité, morning dew still clung to the manicured hedges as Naomi wandered through the gardens of what was now supposedly her home. 3 weeks into their marriage, and Edison's sprawling Westchester estate remained as foreign to her as its owner. Their wedding had been exactly as promised, small but elegant. Her parents had beamed with pride, unaware of the contract that bound their daughter to Edison Park. His grandmother, wheelchair-bound but sharp-eyed, had watched the ceremony with obvious satisfaction, occasionally squeezing Edison's hand with arthritic fingers. The old woman's approval had sealed the business deal disguised as matrimony. Naomi paused beside a Japanese maple, its leaves shifting from green to crimson with the changing season. Like her, it was in transition. Not quite what it had been, not yet what it would become. "Mrs. Park, there's a delivery for you at the east entrance." The housekeeper, Willa, stood at a respectful distance. Though kind, the staff maintained a formality that reinforced Naomi's feeling of displacement. "Please. Just Naomi is fine," she reminded gently, following Willa toward the house. The delivery turned out to be 6 large crates. The shipping labels read "Botanical Research Equipment. Fragile." Naomi's heart raced as she directed the workers to bring everything to her laboratory space. Hours later, She was still unpacking specialized microscopes, climate control systems, and specimen preservation tools, all top-of-the-line equipment she could never have afforded on her research stipend. No note accompanied the delivery, but Edison's involvement was obvious. "I see the equipment arrived." His voice startled her. Edison stood in the doorway, his usual tailored suit exchanged for a simple button-down and slacks. "This is far more than necessary," Naomi managed, overwhelmed by the generosity that contradicted their purely transactional relationship. Edison shrugged slightly. "Your research has significant potential. It would be illogical to limit your capabilities." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. "Excuse me," he said, stepping into the hallway. Naomi caught fragments of his conversation, something about market projections and investment concerns. That evening, Naomi ate dinner alone, as usual. Edison worked late most nights, and they had settled into a rhythm of polite distance. She had almost finished when he appeared in the doorway. "I apologize for missing dinner again," he said, loosening his tie. Fatigue lined his face. "There's a situation with our Asia expansion." "It's fine," Naomi replied automatically. "We agreed our routines wouldn't be disrupted." Edison nodded but hesitated before leaving. "Your father called the office today. The first quarter reports for the nursery show significant improvement." Something warm flickered in Naomi's chest. He could have delegated that call to an assistant, yet he'd taken it himself. "Thank you for telling me." Later, unable to sleep, Naomi wandered to the kitchen for tea. She froze at the entrance. Edison sat at the island counter, spreadsheets scattered around his laptop, his glasses pushed up into his dark hair as he rubbed his eyes. He noticed her immediately. "Can't sleep?" "Too many thoughts," she admitted, moving to prepare her tea. Edison watched her quietly before saying, "The eastern greenhouse needs renovation. I thought perhaps you might want to oversee the changes, make it suitable for some of your specimens." The offer caught her off guard. "You don't need to do that." "The space is unused," he replied simply. "It seems practical." As Naomi steeped her tea, she noticed a familiar book beside Edison's laptop, Medicinal Applications of Rare Plant Compounds. She had mentioned it once during a brief conversation weeks ago. "You're reading about botanical research?" she asked, surprised. A hint of color touched Edison's cheeks. "I like to understand the fundamentals of any project I'm invested in." "Is that what I am? A project?" The words escaped before she could stop them. Edison met her eyes directly. "No, you're my wife, even if only on paper. Your work matters to you. Therefore it matters to me." The simple statement lingered in the air between them, more intimate than any conversation they'd shared before. For the first time, Naomi wondered if there might be more to Edison Park than spreadsheets and business strategies. The next morning, Naomi found a handwritten note on her laboratory door. "Greenhouse renovation plans ready for your review when convenient. Your input is essential." She traced her fingers over the neat, precise handwriting. For a man of so few words, Edison seemed to be trying to communicate something beyond their agreement. What that might be, Naomi wasn't sure she was ready to discover. Seeds of change. The autumn rain pelted against the newly installed glass panels of the eastern greenhouse as Naomi carefully transferred her rarest specimen, a Himalayan orchid with potential anti-inflammatory properties, into its new habitat. 2 months into their marriage, and the greenhouse renovation had been completed with remarkable efficiency, transforming the neglected space into a state-of-the-art research environment. Her phone buzzed with a message from her father. "Quarterly profits up 22%. Whatever advice Edison's giving us is working miracles." Naomi smiled, though guilt pinched at her conscience. Her parents still believed their marriage was a whirlwind romance. Edison's insistence that they be spared the truth had seemed like mere practicality at first, but now she recognized it as kindness. The greenhouse door opened, admitting a gust of cool air and Willa, who looked uncharacteristically concerned. "Mrs. Park, Naomi, Mr. Park has returned from his Tokyo trip early." "He's in his study." The housekeeper hesitated. "He seems troubled." Naomi frowned. Edison wasn't due back for 3 more days, and troubled wasn't a word often associated with his carefully controlled demeanor. "Thank you, Willa," she said, removing her gardening gloves. Though she told herself it was mere curiosity, Naomi's steps quickened as she made her way to Edison's study. The door stood partially open. Inside, Edison paced before the rain-streaked windows, his phone pressed to his ear, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. The projections were wrong, Darren. We're looking at a 30% loss if this security breach is as extensive as preliminary reports suggest. His voice remained level, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed his concern. Naomi hesitated at the threshold, unsure if she should intrude on what was clearly a business crisis. As she turned to leave, the floorboard creaked beneath her. Edison looked up, surprise briefly replacing worry on his face. I need solutions by morning, he told the caller before ending the call. Naomi, I didn't mean to disturb your work. You didn't, she assured him, stepping into the room. You're back early. A situation required my immediate attention. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, a rare display of vulnerability. Naomi found herself moving toward the small bar cart in the corner. My father always said bad news requires good scotch, she commented, pouring 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal tumbler. A ghost of a smile touched Edison's lips as he accepted the glass. Wise man, what happened? Naomi asked, surprising herself with her genuine concern. Edison took a sip before answering. Someone breached our security protocols, accessed developmental data for our newest medical technology platform. He shook his head. It's not just the financial implications. This technology could help modernize rural healthcare delivery. If it's compromised. The passion in his voice struck Naomi. In their business discussions, Edison had always focused on growth and market strategy. This was the first time she'd heard him speak about the human impact of his work. Can I help? She offered impulsively. Edison glanced at her, clearly caught off guard. This isn't your concern under our arrangement. Maybe not, Naomi acknowledged. But I'm good at solving puzzles and I understand research protocols. Fresh eyes sometimes see what others miss. After a moment's hesitation, Edison pulled up a chair beside his desk and opened his laptop. These are the breach reports. The timestamps don't align with the server logs, which suggests they worked through the evening, ordering dinner to the study as they analyzed data patterns. Naomi's methodical approach to research complemented Edison's strategic thinking. By midnight, they had traced the breach to an internal testing protocol that had created a temporary vulnerability. We can patch this, Edison said, the relief evident in his voice as he sent instructions to his security team. You were right about the anomaly in the test sequence. Naomi smiled, unexpectedly pleased by his approval. My research requires attention to irregular patterns. This wasn't so different. Edison leaned back in his chair, studying her with new awareness. You continue to surprise me, Naomi Winters. Park, she corrected automatically. Naomi Park, according to our arrangement. Something shifted in Edison's expression. Yes, according to our arrangement. He closed his laptop. It's late. You should rest. As Naomi turned to leave, Edison added quietly, Thank you. Not just for your help tonight, but for... He gestured vaguely, seeming uncharacteristically at a loss for words. For upholding our contract? Naomi suggested, trying to reestablish the boundaries that suddenly felt less defined. For making this house feel less empty, he answered simply. That night, lying awake in her separate bedroom, Naomi found herself replaying the evening. Not just the problem-solving, but the moments when Edison's careful facade had slipped, revealing glimpses of passion, frustration, and gratitude, emotions that made him human rather than merely a signature on their contract. Her phone chimed with a message. Your insight saved us millions and preserved a project that matters. Thank you for stepping beyond our agreement tonight. Naomi stared at the ceiling, confronting an uncomfortable realization. Somewhere between the contract signing and now, Edison Park had stopped being just a business partner. What he was becoming, she wasn't quite ready to define. The hidden garden December arrived with the first snow, transforming the estate grounds into a pristine white canvas. 4 months into their arrangement, and Naomi found herself settling into rhythms she had never anticipated. Morning coffee with Edison had evolved from awkward silence to comfortable conversation. Dinners, once eaten separately, were now often shared in the small breakfast nook rather than the formal dining room. Today marked a significant milestone in Naomi's research. Her modified extraction process had finally yielded consistent results with the Himalayan orchid compound. She hurried through the connecting corridor between the greenhouse and the main house, eager to document her findings. As she passed Edison's study, she noticed the door ajar and his assistant, Tessa, arranging files on his desk. "Good afternoon, Naomi," Tessa greeted warmly. The staff had gradually dropped formalities at Naomi's insistence. "Edison asked me to prepare these reports for his return tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Naomi paused. "I thought his Vancouver conference ended today." "He made a detour," Tessa explained. "Something about specialized equipment." Curiosity piqued, Naomi continued to her laboratory. Her breakthrough deserved celebration, but the person she most wanted to share it with was inexplicably absent. This realization unsettled her. When had Edison become the first person she thought of sharing her successes with? Later that evening, as Naomi reviewed her data, an email notification appeared on her tablet. From Dr. Harlow Bennett, National Botanical Research Foundation. Subject: Application Status, Research Grant Program. Dear Dr. Park, we are pleased to inform you that your application for the Foundation's Innovation Grant has been selected for final consideration. The committee was particularly impressed with the supplementary materials detailing your laboratory specifications and preliminary results. Naomi stared at the screen in confusion. She hadn't applied for this grant. The deadline had passed weeks before she'd even considered resuming her research. And Dr. Park? She still published under Winters professionally. A quick search of her sent emails confirmed her suspicion. She hadn't submitted this application. But someone had, complete with detailed descriptions of her current work. The sound of a car on the gravel driveway drew her attention. Through the window, she spotted Edison exiting a town car, directing the driver to carefully unload several crates marked with scientific equipment labels. Naomi grabbed her coat and hurried outside, snow crunching beneath her boots. "You're back early," she called as she approached. Edison turned, surprise flickering across his features before his composure returned. "The final session was optional. I had other priorities, like submitting grant applications in my name," she asked directly, watching his reaction. A brief hesitation confirmed her suspicion. "You received the notification? Why would you do that?" Naomi asked, genuinely puzzled. "The grant isn't necessary. You've funded everything I need." "The work should stand on its own merit," Edison replied, guiding the delivery men toward the East Wing. "Your research deserves recognition independent of our arrangement." Naomi followed, processing his words. "But how did you even know about the application requirements?" "The submission was comprehensive. Research history, methodology, projected outcomes." Edison avoided her gaze as they entered the main house. "I may have read your previous publications." "And your research notes, my notes?" Naomi stopped in her tracks. "Those are private. Not the ones you leave open on your desk," he countered, a hint of defensiveness in his tone. "I was interested in understanding your work. It's remarkable." Something in his earnest admission deflated Naomi's indignation. "You could have asked. Would you have shared them with me?" "Truly?" The question held more weight than it should have. Before she could respond, they reached a door Naomi had never noticed before, adjacent to her laboratory but concealed by a decorative panel. "What's this?" she asked. Edison hesitated before producing a key. It was meant to be a surprise. For Christmas. He unlocked the door, revealing a small anteroom that opened into a spectacular sight, a circular conservatory filled with flowering plants, many of which Naomi recognized as rare specimens she had mentioned in her research. "Edison," she breathed, stepping into the space. Climate controls hummed softly, maintaining precise temperature and humidity levels. Specialized growing lights simulated natural conditions for plants from diverse regions. At the center stood a custom workstation with advanced microscopy equipment. "You mentioned wanting to study pollinators' interactions with these species," Edison explained quietly. "The regular greenhouse wasn't suitable for introducing live subjects." Naomi turned slowly, taking in the months of planning this space must have required. "This is why you asked so many questions about my research methodology." Edison nodded, watching her carefully. "Is it acceptable?" The clinical term struck Naomi as absurdly inadequate for the thoughtfulness this gift represented. "It's extraordinary," she corrected, her voice thick with emotion. As she explored the conservatory, Naomi noticed a small leather journal on the workstation. Opening it, she found Edison's precise handwriting, detailed notes on each plant species, their native habitats, growth requirements, and connections to her research. The final page contained a simple note: your work could change lives. All it needed was space to grow. When she looked up, Edison was watching her with an expression she'd never seen before: hope, vulnerability, and something deeper that neither of them had acknowledged. "Why?" she asked simply. "This goes far beyond our contract." Edison took a step toward her, then hesitated. "I'm beginning to think many things do." The admission hung between them, neither willing to fully articulate what it meant. But as snow fell silently outside the glass walls of this hidden garden he had created for her, Naomi felt the carefully constructed boundaries of their arrangement beginning to crumble like autumn leaves. Beyond paper promises, the invitation arrived on heavy cream cardstock, the National Botanical Research Foundation's embossed logo gleaming in gold leaf. The board of directors requests the pleasure of Dr. Naomi Park's company at the annual Innovation Gala. 8 months into their arrangement, and Naomi's research had advanced further than she'd dreamed possible. The foundation never reveals grant recipients before the ceremony, Naomi mused, showing Edison the invitation as they shared breakfast in the morning sunlight of the conservatory, now her favorite place in the estate. Edison looked up from his tablet, the hint of a smile touching his lips. Perhaps an exception was made. "You didn't—" Naomi narrowed her eyes. "Influence the selection committee?" "Absolutely not." His expression turned serious. "Your work earned this recognition, Naomi. The compound extraction method you developed has implications far beyond what even you initially projected." She couldn't argue with that. The anti-inflammatory properties of her orchid compound had shown remarkable efficacy in preliminary lab tests. Edison's connections had accelerated the research timeline, connecting her with leading medical researchers who recognized the potential implications for treating chronic inflammatory conditions. "The gala is in 2 weeks, Naomi noted. "Right before our anniversary," Edison finished quietly. 1 year. The unspoken hung between them, 1/3 of their contractual obligation completed. 2 more years before they could dissolve their arrangement without financial penalty or family suspicion. Edison cleared his throat. "We should discuss the quarterly review for your family's business. The projections are exceeding expectations." The abrupt subject change was typical whenever their conversation veered toward the personal. Despite months of growing closeness, working side by side in the evenings, sharing meals, building something that felt increasingly less like an arrangement, Edison maintained certain boundaries with careful precision. The night of the gala arrived with unexpected nerves. Naomi stood before her bedroom mirror, smoothing the emerald silk gown she'd chosen. A soft knock at the door revealed Edison, handsome in his tuxedo, a small velvet box in his hand. "A gift," he explained, opening it to reveal a delicate platinum necklace with a pendant shaped like her Himalayan orchid, tiny emeralds forming the distinctive pattern of its petals. "Edison, it's beautiful," she whispered as he stepped behind her to fasten it. His fingers brushed the nape of her neck, lingering a moment longer than necessary. "It reminded me of the first day I saw you truly excited about your research. When you showed me the initial compound extraction." The memory, Edison leaning over her microscope, their shoulders touching as she explained her findings, warmed her. "You actually understood what I was talking about." "I always listen when you speak," he said simply, his eyes meeting hers in the mirror. The gala ballroom glittered with scientific luminaries and philanthropists. As Naomi circulated among her peers, she was repeatedly congratulated for securing the prestigious grant. Edison remained nearby, not hovering but present, his quiet pride evident as he watched her shine in her element. "Dr. Park," called Dr. Harlow Bennett, approaching with a distinguished older gentleman. "Allow me to introduce Dr. William Frost, Director of Meridian Laboratories. He's quite interested in your research applications." The conversation that followed would have seemed impossible a year ago. A potential partnership to develop her botanical compound into medical treatments, with Meridian providing the clinical research infrastructure her work needed to advance. "This could accelerate your timeline by years," Dr. Frost explained enthusiastically. "Of course, it would require relocation to our Cambridge facility for at least 18 months. Naomi's excitement faltered. Relocate. The opportunity is exceptional. Edison's voice came from behind her, startling Naomi with its proximity. You should strongly consider it. She turned to him, searching his face for some indication of his thoughts, but his expression revealed nothing beyond polite interest. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur. When Naomi was announced as the grant recipient, the applause was thunderous. Edison stood silently at their table, his eyes never leaving her as she accepted the award and delivered a brief speech about the future of botanical medicine. The drive home was weighted with unspoken tension. As the car turned into the estate's long driveway, Edison finally broke the silence. You should take the Meridian opportunity. Naomi stared at his profile, illuminated by the dashboard lights. It would mean leaving for over a year. Our arrangement doesn't require physical proximity, Edison replied, his voice carefully neutral. The terms only specify public appearances sufficient to maintain the appearance of a marriage. Is that all this is to you? Terms and appearances? The question escaped before she could stop it. Edison parked the car but didn't move to exit. What else could it be, Naomi? We entered this with clear expectations. Expectations change, she said quietly. People change, do they? Edison finally turned to face her, his composure cracking slightly. Or do they simply discover what was always there, buried beneath practicality and protection? The question hung between them as they entered the house, the silence stretching as they reached the staircase that would lead them to their separate rooms. I found something, Naomi said abruptly. When I was looking for reference materials in your study last week. Edison stilled. What did you find? A file? About my research from 3 years ago, before we met. You had reports on my work dating back to my graduate studies. She watched his reaction carefully. You knew who I was before my family's business failed. Edison closed his eyes briefly. Yes. Why approach me with this arrangement then? Was my research the real target all along? No. Edison's response was immediate and forceful. Your research was brilliant but undervalued. You were brilliant but undervalued. When I learned of your family's situation, it seemed providential. Providential, Naomi repeated, as if the universe had created a convenient business opportunity. Edison stepped closer, his careful restraint visibly wavering. As if the universe had offered a way to bring you into my life without revealing how thoroughly you had already captured my attention. The confession silenced her. I never expected to develop feelings beyond our agreement, he continued quietly. I promised myself I would keep appropriate distance, support your work without imposing unwanted complications. And yet you built me a conservatory, Naomi whispered. You read my research notes and remembered every detail. You created the perfect environment for my work to flourish. Because I want you to succeed, even if that success takes you away from here, from me. The raw honesty in his voice stripped away the last pretense between them. Naomi reached for his hand, entwining their fingers. What if I don't want to leave? The opportunity is remarkable, she finished. But so is what we've built here. Not just the research facilities, but this. She gestured between them, whatever this has become. Edison's free hand rose hesitantly to her face. We still have 2 years on our contract, Naomi smiled, leaning into his touch. I'm thinking of renegotiating the terms. What terms did you have in mind? He asked, hope cautiously entering his expression. Fewer separate bedrooms, she suggested. More honesty about intentions. And perhaps, she met his gaze directly, a clause about the possibility of genuine partnership, beyond paper promises. Edison's carefully maintained reserve finally broke into a genuine smile. I believe those terms could be acceptable. As he drew her closer, Naomi realized that what had begun as a reluctant signature on a contract had bloomed into something neither of them had anticipated. A love that had grown not from grand gestures or passionate declarations, but from respect, support, and the quiet nurturing of each other's dreams. Their lips met in a kiss that sealed a new arrangement, one written not on legal documents, but on their hearts.